Chita looks at me and she says, "Them's the breaks, kid, huh?" And my body just went flush.
Welcome to Dance Dish, where the dance ends and the dish begins. I'm Helene Phillips, the creator of Dance Dish, and your host for this week's episode. So in general, I always like to keep Dance Dish pretty light and fun, but on a little bit of a serious note, we just had the passing of, a legend. Her name is Chita Rivera, and I am just so grateful because I am sitting next to someone who not only worked with her, he bonded with her, he developed a true friendship with her. And I love the fact that now on Dance Dish, we get to hear all her stories. So without further ado, let me introduce my friend and most talented man, Mr. Ramon del Barrio.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
I never worked with her at all, and she's an incredible talent and force.
The first time I met her, Scott Solomon had introduced me to her. I'd seen her in Chicago, and I was glowing. I went backstage, and literally she grabbed my face and kissed me. When you're in the presence of magic, and then magic sees its effect. And she was so gracious, and she just grabbed me, and she looked at me, and she was like, and I think I was 19 or 20.
And this is just an introduction.
Because there was something magical happening.
Yeah.
So the first time that I worked with her, I was cast to dance in a number for PBS Great Performances, Broadway Sings the Music of Julie Stein. Alan Johnson was the choreographer.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing Alan Johnson.
Amazing Alan Johnson.
I had done the 30th anniversary Company of
no
West
longer
Side.
here.
Yeah, may he rest. My first Broadway show was with Hal Prince. I did a musical called Rosa. It was short-lived, but it was amazing. There was an audition for this upcoming project, and I auditioned, and me and another guy got a call back, and so they flew us to New York, and we auditioned, and it was a big hubbub. I didn't know that Hal Prince was the director. I didn't know it was Cantor and Ebb, and I didn't know that Chita was the star.
Oh, wow.
But I wanted to make records because I grew up in the record industry with my family, and my uncle. My uncle wrote Fantasy with Earth, Wind & Fire.
Yeah.
My dad worked with Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, all these people, and I wanted to make records.
You didn't know what show?
I didn't know anything about it, and I turned it down.
And do we know the show?
Kiss of the Spider Woman.
Oh, okay.
And so, I didn't do the job. I try not to regret things, but one of my biggest regrets was that because of how amazing that trajectory was for her.
Sure, but I mean, at the moment, though, in your life, you had other goals.
Well, I put together a show. My father was my musical director. I had 4 background singers. I wrote all the music. I had 2 amazing dancers. I choreographed. I was the star of my show and knew what it was like to have those moments that I experienced being with Whitney, where I now was the person in the center with a microphone.
Let me say something.
Sure.
I feel in life, I don't want to get deep and give a life lesson or anything, but there's lots of pieces to living. I need to pay my rent. I'd like to feel creative. What are my life goals? All these things that, it's fair to address all of them, to listen to all of them. And it's not always about what's the most bitchin' gig. And it's all about just how much money am I gonna make, at least in my opinion.
And it all depends on what your aspirations are.
Yeah.
Of course, my aspiration was to be a dancer. I was very fortunate enough to get to do the dance jobs that I wanted. I moved to New York, I studied, I did Broadway, I did off-Broadway. I did make some records. I didn't release them, but I was in the recording studio.
Which I'm sure felt great.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I got to sing on Prince of Egypt soundtrack. I got called in to be Martin Short's demo vocalist, where we were making up voices.
Opened doors.
I had the experiences, regardless of whether or not I released an EP, but there's something coming. I'm working on something, so it ain't over. But I followed my gut. And this is something that, as you say, following your gut, following your dreams, you have to do it. Then my friend Richard Amaro, who we did West Side Story together, amazing dancer, choreographer, director, producer, he created a benefit called Latin Rhythms for Broadway Cares.
And Broadway Cares, maybe explain what that
Broadway
is.
Cares, Equity Fights AIDS, is an organization for 27 years that has been raising money to help support service organizations across the country, as well as artists living and dealing with HIV and AIDS. So Richard had created this evening, and Chita was the star. Antonio Banderas was supposed to be one of the singers, and
Wow.
he couldn't make it. And so I got to sing Beautiful Maria with the salsa orchestra. And it was the first time that Chita saw me as an individual singing with the salsa orchestra, and we danced, and it was an amazing evening. And then Chita asked me to do her tour of Chita Rivera, The Dancer's Life. So a friend of mine had been working, doing some student films, and she called me and she was like, I've got other things that I'm gonna do. Do you want to? And I was like, sure. I think I did it for pizza.
Always for pizza?
Always for pizza. And then subsequently, because of that, I choreographed another student film, a director by the name of Ari Sandel, and that was a film called West Bank Story. Which was loosely based on West Side Story, but dealing with the unrest, unfortunately, of the peace in the Middle East and all of that. So Chita had asked me to go on tour with her, and so I'm on tour, and Chita's telling her life story of all the choreographers she'd worked with, and there's one section where she talks about slights, how show business is this and show business is that, and slights, and Rita Moreno, won an Oscar for a role that I created on Broadway, and how wonderful for her, and and how wonderful for me, but sometimes the humanity of it all, show business, there's slights, and they're tough.
I've never actually
moments.
heard someone say it, but that's what it is.
And so there are these moments that are like, they're poignant. And so I remember we were on tour, and then all of a sudden West Bank Story was nominated for an Academy Award in the Best Live Action category, and the live action was dance.
High five.
Still working on making sure that the value of what dancers and choreographers bring to production, and how in this case, put it in a category that made it available. But it was so poignant that it got legs. But Chita had let me out of the show to go to the Oscars, and we won the Oscar.
That's amazing.
And it was the most amazing thing.
Amazing.
There we are. The director, he's crazy, can't believe this is happening, and and he doesn't say my name.
Oh, no.
Now, granted,
It's like everyone's nightmare. I don't mention somebody.
I
mean, not that I have an Oscar.
And he said it on the camera, off stage camera, like that. I'm sure he was like, what. And so, but still, as a veteran, there were 3 adults. There was me, the costume designer, and the music, and we were like the ones working with the kids. So you think, like maybe this is my shot. Like, what are the chances? And I get on a plane the next day, and I join Chita in the cast up in Seattle. And I walk into the green room, and Chita's there, and she looks at me, and she could tell I'm amazed, but I'm disappointed, because you wait a lifetime. Anyway,
of course.
So Chita looks at me, and she says, "Them's the breaks, kid, huh?" And my body just went flush, because I was having this experience, and she knew what it was, having, of course, experienced what she was sharing in her show. And she said, well, congratulations, but now let's get back to the real work. And the real work was being on her stage and warming up with her, and her reaching out, singing There's a Place for Us, and sharing the stories. And
it's true, right?
And it really landed me in a different place. And that's what Chita was. Chita was and is everything that was great and original and authentic. And she was a real Broadway gypsy and a real dame.
Yeah, 100%.
And so you could watch her do the most amazing thing, and then she could meet you backstage and just be a real broad. And that's what Chita's friendship was. And she really cared. I mean, she really tuned into what my experience was, but then also to be able to be the one to go, I mean, them's the breaks, kid. If you wrote it, it was like, and cut. Perfect, like the impact that she's made on my life forever is that of striving for greatness, doing the work, never stopping, but never forgetting the realness of life. Like Chita was real.
Yeah, grounded.
She was grounded. She saw you. Everybody that Chita met, she met.
Yeah.
And she was there.
We gotta do a toast I wanna do a toast to you for sharing all these heartfelt. Let's do a toast to Chita.
Yes.
And to doing the work. Keeping it real.
Keeping it real, showing up.
Showing up.
Being humble.
Being humble.
Loving what we do.
Here's to you.
Here's to you.
Here's to Dance Dish.
Dance Dish.
Huzzah. I did it all.
Okay.
Go.
I'll do it.
Go.
That's the break skin.
Oh.